Hi, you guys. My name is Abby Smith, and I am here to teach you today about one of my favorite subjects, poetry. And being a future teacher myself, I have so many books in my personal room. And when I was looking through them the other day, I did not realize the extent of the amount of poetry books that I had. And so I wanted to share with you in case you guys were interested in reading more poems and poetry, because I think that our lives, especially during a time like this, should be filled with poems. So some of the favorites that I picked out of my collection are Daniel Finds a Poem by Michael Archer, which is a really great book with beautiful pictures. A Kick in the Head, which is more descriptive about the different types of poetry. I have All the Small Poems and 14 More, and this is not so much a story but just individual poems on different pages, so about seashells or asparagus, horses. I have a book called Firefly July, which goes through the year using poetry and awesome funny pictures. Here's a picture of a chicken. And I have Love That Dog, which I'm sure many of you have read before. And it actually has a sequel, in case you didn't know, called Hate That Cat. But this one, I love this book. And last but not least, I have a book called Forest Has a Song. And this will be the one that we are going to be focusing on today for our poetry lesson. So this book is written by Amy Ludwig van der Water, and this is her first children's book that she has written. She's an incredible author and writes a lot of poetry. So she is definitely good at what she does, and this book goes to show for it. So this book has 26 poems all throughout, accompanied by watercolor pictures. So I'll show you some of them. So we have some people on logs and some animals. We have leaves, woodpeckers, more leaves, more people. And so when I'm looking through this book, at first glance, I know that this book is almost like a nature walk, like a nature walk version of a book, because even just with my eyes, just looking at the pictures and not reading the words, I'm seeing that everything that I'm looking at is kind of taking me through as if I was actually going on a walk through the woods. So I would see, so this poem right here is called Woodpecker. This one is called Warning, which I'm looking at the three leaves and I'm thinking maybe poison ivy. I'm looking right here where it says puff. So maybe this is one of those little dandelion things that you can blow. Home, which is a log. So maybe it's a home to things that live in the log. Moss, bone pile, we can go on and on. So this book, the reason why I like it so much is that during a time like this, when we are stuck inside and we can't really leave our houses and we can't do a lot of things, we always have the option to read, and we always have the option to reflect on a book. And this book is like a nature walk, y'all. It is awesome. So Forest Has a Song. When I first saw the title, I thought Forest was this girl right here. But in fact, after reading the whole book, I know that the forest, or the forest is what we're talking about, is the actual forest. And the song is all of the poems that come out of being in the forest and being on our virtual reading nature walk. So the poem that we are going to be focusing on today is called Home. So I will show you the picture. And I am going to read this poem to you. And as I read it, I want you to think about a few things. I want you to think, number one, what do you notice about this poem? And I'll help you through these questions, no, I promise. So, what do you notice is the first one. What does this poem cause you to wonder? Because as a good reader and a good writer, I'm always constantly reflecting in my mind, and I'm always thinking, I wonder what the author meant by, or I wonder if this meant blah, 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 so and so. Okay, so I want you to think, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Does anything stick out? In this poem, there are going to be a few things that sound a little crazy and that will stick out to you. So I want you to be a detective and be on the lookout for that. And do you notice any patterns in this poem? Because I think there might be a pattern. So pay attention to this as I read, and I will read it through a few times. That way you can think about these questions. So this poem is called Home. A rotten log is home to a bug, home to beetle, home to slug, home to chipmunk, home to bee. A lively living hidden home inside a fallen tree. So this is our picture. And if you need to take a second to pause this, go ahead and pause it so you can think about our 4 questions. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Does anything stick out? And do you see any patterns? So I'll read it through one more time and then go ahead and pause your screen and either talk with someone next to you or jot it down in your writer's notebook. And so here's my writer's notebook. So I just wanted to show you guys that I also do have one, so you can jot down the answers or what you think. So there is no right or wrong question, or there is no right and wrong answer to this. So just what you think and what you got from the poem. So I'll read it one more time and then go ahead and click that pause button. So this is called Home. Home, a rotten log is home to bug, home to beetle, home to slug, home to chipmunk, home to bee, a lively living hidden home inside a fallen tree. So go ahead and click pause on your computer so that way you can discuss and write down your thoughts about this poem. Okay, welcome back. So I'm sure you guys noticed that this poem is different than most poems that maybe you're familiar with, or most poems, the ones that I showed you earlier, ones that I really like. And the reason why I love this poem so much, and the reason why I chose it to focus on for this lesson, is because the first thing I saw is that it doesn't really rhyme. Yes, there are a few rhyming words in there, but not every single line in the poem rhymes. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. That is totally okay. Not every single poem has to rhyme. And I know sometimes it sounds really cool when they rhyme and you sound a little like Dr. Seuss, but not every single poem has to rhyme. So that's the first reason why I chose it. And the second reason why I chose it, and I wonder if any of my young writers out there noticed and picked up on this too, but one of the patterns that our author used for this poem is a tool that we like to call repetition. And so repetition is when an author repeats either the same phrase, line, or word to get her point across. So in this instant, in our poem Home, does anybody know what word or phrase or line that our author decided to use repetition on? Did anybody put it in their writer's notebook, or did anybody have a discussion about it? I'm curious because when we look back at our poem, we can see home, 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 right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times that she used the same word home. Now, was our author just being lazy and she didn't want to come up with another word for home? No, this is what good poets do. So today we are going to be focusing on repetition poetry, okay? And this is one of my favorite things, because when we're reading poems and we see something that is repeated many times, we call that repetition. But we have to be good and deep thinkers and wonder, why is the author repeating that? Why is she deciding to repeat the word home and home and home? What's so important about that? So whenever we see repetition, there is a special meaning behind it. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And we are going to talk more about repetition poetry. So Let's see. So this is my PowerPoint. So welcome authors, you are invited to my lesson of repetition poetry. Okay, so repetition poetry, like I said, is a literary device, which means just a fancy word for things that we do in language arts that uses the same words and phrases a few times to make ideas clear to the reader. So our author, Amy, used home, home, home to make it very, very clear to the reader that this log was home to many things. And she was emphasizing the fact that it is more than just a rotten log. In fact, it's a home. So this can be a word, sentence, or phrase that is repeated, and it's repeated to show the significance throughout the entire text. It can strengthen feelings, words, idea, or mood, and mood is how we typically feel. So this is a quote that I pulled that I think really kind of ties in with this lesson. It says, language in poetry is a magical language. It summons the world into meaning. So this language that we are using today with our poems that we are going to be creating together is extremely powerful. And you have the magic and you have the touch to use this language to summon everyone and to get into deeper thinking and to show moods and to show feelings. And that is all in your hands. And that is so incredible. And we're going to talk more about that today and how you can do it. So I picked out another poem by Amy. And so this poem is called My Friend. And as you might already tell through this poem, maybe just by glancing on it, does anybody see any repetition? Because I do. Even in the title and the first line, I see my friend, my friend. So let's read. And I'm going to read it through one time. And then I'm going to ask you questions. And I want you to pause after each question. They're just like the same questions I asked you last time. So this is called My Friend. My friend has a friend much smaller than her. My friend has a friend who knows how to fly. My friend has a friend who glimmers in sunlight. My friend has a friend shiny and shy. My friend hears her friend at the bubbler each morning. My friend sees her friend stay so still in blue sky. My friend and her hummingbird visit each noon. My friend has a friend and she's patient. That's why. So I'm going to ask you guys a few questions, and after each question, I want you to pause and either discuss with someone next to you or write down in your writer's notebook. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what do you notice about this poem and what stands out to you? So if I were with you right now, a way that I would be answering that question if you were asking me would be, when I read this poem, it makes me think. Okay, so go ahead and pause this, and I want you to start your sentence with, when I read this poem, it makes me think. So go ahead and pause your screen. Okay, so the next question I'm going to ask you is, how does this poem make you feel? So you can answer this, or you can answer this question with, I feel. So go ahead and click pause. Okay, another question that I have for you is, what poetry patterns do you see? And I know we talked about one particular pattern last time, and you can answer this question by saying, I see. So go ahead and click pause. One more question is, does this poet, so, oh, by the way, this is Amy Ludwig van der Water again. So this is the same person who wrote Forest Has a Song. So does she use anything, do anything with special words? Or are there any words that stick out to you? Any phrases? Does anything surprise you? So go ahead and click pause. And one last question that I'm going to ask is, what is the poet talking about here? What is she trying to say? What is the message that she is trying to get across? So you can answer this by saying, I think the poet is trying to say. Go ahead and click pause. Okay, you guys. So the reason why that I chose this poem was number one, because it was by our same author, Amy Ludwig van der Water, who wrote Forest Has a Song, like I said earlier. And another thing that really, really stuck out to me, besides the pretty pink color background that it was on, was the fact that it used our tool of repetition. So repetition, in case you forgot, is the repeated use of phrases, words, or phrases or words in the text. So in this case, the phrase that was repeated was, "My friend has a friend." So, like I said, repetition is a very, very important tool because it's trying to show a message and it's trying to show something and get something across within our poem. So, based off of this, what do you think Amy Ludwig is trying to tell us? What do you think is the purpose of repeating, "My friend has a friend"? If you are with someone, go ahead and pause and have a discussion about it. Otherwise, go ahead and jot down a little note in your journal. Okay, you guys, I think the purpose of "My friend has a friend" is to show that this friendship that is made between two people, and we don't know their name, but that's okay. And we don't know who they are, but that's okay because we don't need to in this second. But the purpose, I think, and it's okay if you got a different purpose. I would love to know what it was. My friend sees her friend is to show the importance of the friendship between these two people. And as we read more in this poem, we see, okay, so we know the friend is small, and we know they know how to fly, and they glimmer, and they're kind of shy. So I'm thinking, okay, what is small that flies and is kind of shy? Maybe a butterfly, but then I'm reading at the bubbler, and I don't really know what a bubbler is. That's okay. I'll just go on to the next line. So she stays so still in the blue sky. Still don't really know what she's talking about yet. And then she says, "Oh, her hummingbird visit each noon." And then I think back to what I know about hummingbirds. And I know that hummingbirds are very, very small, and they fly, they glimmer, they are very, very shy. They will not let you come near them. And they stay still as they sit there and they eat the nectar. And they're very, very small, and they like to stay still, like I said, and they kind of come around very often. And so this friendship that's between the two people is important, and it runs off of the patience that happens, because you have to be patient around a hummingbird because they won't stay, because they're so shy and they don't come around all the time. So I think that's why she wanted to repeat, "My friend has a friend," is to show the friendship between the two. So I'm going to break down this poem a little more. So like I said, Amy used our key tool of repetition throughout the poem. So "My friend has a friend," "My friend has a friend." You can see where I highlighted it on the screen. So that was the very, very first thing that I noticed. And you can see in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 and 7th stanza, she only used "my friend." She didn't say "my friend has a friend," but that is still repetition because she's still using the same first two words in that phrase. The next thing that I notice, so I see glimmers in sunlight, and instantly when I read it, I pictured something shiny and something almost like a mirror and like reflecting in my mind. Did anybody else picture something like that in their mind? I definitely did. And another thing as I read, and I kind of saw and pictured it in my mind when I read "stay so still in blue sky." I instantly pictured that too. And there are some other things too that I pictured, but glimmers in sunlight and "stay so still in blue sky" instantly where I was attracted to. And so I like to call those two things painting a picture. So Amy used her words to show, not tell. And so what I mean by that is that she used these words to put a picture in my mind. She used very, very descriptive words. Even though she only used a few words, it still stuck as an image in my mind. So that's what we call painting a picture. The next thing that I noticed in this poem is shiny and shy. So shiny and shy, and "stay so still." What do you guys notice about those phrases? So shiny and shy, and stay so still. So this is a new term that you might be learning today too. And if you already know it, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. But we're all going to come away with the knowledge of alliteration. And alliteration is repeated use of the same sounds. So shiny and shy, stay so still. You notice how they both start with, or shiny and shy both start with SH, and stay so still both all start with S. That's what we call alliteration. And we'll come back to that when we write our own poems, because this is another great thing that authors use when writing poems. And the last thing that I picked up on, and as I read through the poem again, you might have heard me say, I have no idea what a bubbler is. Does anybody know what a bubbler is? Because I don't. So a bubbler, and I had to look it up. Bubbler, that is a very, very strong word that she decided to use. And it was very powerful because it got me thinking. Did it get anyone else thinking? So this is a bubbler. It is what a hummingbird eats off of. So her word choice in this, because she could have easily said hummingbird feeder, but her word choice of a bubbler got me thinking, and it got me researching, and it got my mind engaged. So I love her word choice here. Amy used a toolbox of poetry tools. So right here on this page are poetry tools that good authors and good poets use in a lot of their poems. So we have line breaks, which were in between each of our stanzas in our poem. We have metaphors and similes. I don't know if you guys have learned about metaphors and similes. We have imagery, which is like painting the picture. We have repetition, which is what we are talking about today. Alliteration, using the same sound, which was the shiny and shy and stay so still. And personification, which you don't really have to worry about today either. You don't really have to worry about metaphor, simile, personification, or rhythm today. If you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. So in front of you guys, I want to write my own poem using repetition poetry, just like our poet Amy did with us. So right here you see a blonde dog and a brunette dog, and these are my dogs, and I love writing about them. They are very funny, and I wish you guys could know them. They're very funny, very sweet, and they are the best of friends. And so when I write, I find most comfort in writing about my two dogs, Ellie and Ruby. Ellie's the blonde and Ruby's the brunette. And they're just so easy for me to write because I could watch them all day, and they're just so funny, and they don't even know that they're so funny, and they don't even know what they're doing half the time, but I just love them so much. Is why I love writing about them. So in my poem that I'm about to write with you guys, I want to include 4 things, and just 4 things. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy, but I want to include repetition is the first thing, because repetition is what we are talking about today. I want to paint a picture for my readers. I want to use alliteration, which is the repeated beginning sounds. And I want to use strong words to get my readers thinking and to get their mind engaged, just like Amy did for us. So Amy used all 4 of these devices to paint. Remember, paint with magic in our heads. So when I am talking about repetition first, so some things that I thought of that I could write about about my dogs. Before this, I was thinking that I could write about their big brown eyes, because they both have really, really big brown eyes. I could say my dogs have a friend if I kind of want to go along the lines of what Amy was writing about, where she said my friend has a friend. I could borrow her language and say my dogs have a friend. I could use big brown eyes and big wide paws, which I love that because it just makes me so warm inside. Or I could use wet nose and big heart. And I'm not limited to these 4. These are just 4 things that I wrote down, but I could have also said something like waggy tails and wet noses, or I could say something like a wet tongue and many footsteps down the, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not limited to these 4, but these are the 4 that I came up with as an example for you guys. Another thing that I want to include is painting a picture. So remember, I want to paint a picture for my readers of my poem. So when I was looking at how to paint a picture, I wanted to look at these pictures and think to myself, what do I notice about these pictures? What can I use to make my readers think of this in their mind? So the first thing I saw in both of their pictures is that they have alert ears, which means they were listening to me. Whatever I was saying when I was taking these pictures, they were on it. So I noticed that they're alert ears, and that is something that a reader can see in their mind. I noticed their big eyes, like I said earlier, and that is another thing that readers can see in their mind, like my big eyes. I noticed their wet noses, which is easy to see. Their soft and shiny fur, and that doesn't only paint a picture in my mind, but it makes me feel how warm and soft and shiny they are. And I also notice their large and soft paws, and that is another thing that readers can see in their minds. And like I said, I'm not limited to this, but I just came up with this before. Another thing I want to include is alliteration, which is the repeated use of the same initial sounds. So I said pause, pretty, and patient. I said big, beautiful brown eyes. I said eager ears and a big booming bark. The last thing for my poem is I want to include strong words. And these strong words that I wanted to include were eager, because you can see in these pictures, I think I was probably bribing them with food, but they were eagerly waiting, and they were waiting for that food to drop so they could have it. So that's a strong word, is eager. Patient is another strong word, and loving is another strong word. And one final last thing to think about when you are writing a poem and when I'm writing my poem is, what do I want my reader to learn or to get from my poem? What do I want my reader to get from my poem? And when we use alliteration in our poem, because that's our literary device that we are focusing on today, that is what my reader is going to get, is what is my alliteration trying to tell them. So together, we are going to write my repetition poetry. And so as you saw, my completed one down there, but I don't want to give it away yet. So my repetition poetry, when I go back to my literary devices, so I'm going back to the repetition that I wanted. And the one that I'm going to stick with here is my dogs have a friend. So that is what I'm going to start each stanza with. I'm going to say, my dogs have. And don't feel like you have to start with so-and-so has a friend or this has a friend, because you can see that I used other alliteration forms. I use different phrases, but just for this instance, I'm going to stick with my dogs have a friend. And after that, I know that I wanted to also include alliteration, and I wanted to include painting a picture, and I wanted to use strong words. So I can think of a friend in particular that my dogs like to think that they have, when in fact they actually don't, and that is the squirrel outside, because they crack me up when they are trying to chase and hunt down a squirrel behind the glass of our living room. Like, they'll never get to it. So I'm going to borrow Amy's words in this first stanza, and I'm going to say, my dogs have a friend. So there's my repetition. And I'm going to say, much smaller than them. So that's my first stanza. my next stanza, my dogs have a friend. And so since I'm talking about my squirrel, and I'm looking back because I want to include alliteration, and I see eager ears, but I guess I could also say eager eyes, because when they're looking outside, they're using their eager eyes. And eager is one of my strong words that I wanted to use. And eager eyes, that's alliteration. So I could maybe say, my dogs have a friend with eager eyes to seek out friendship. So maybe I could say my dogs are looking outside because they want to be friends with that squirrel that they see running up and down the tree. So that's my second stanza. So I say, my dogs have a friend much smaller than them. A squirrel is definitely smaller than my dogs. I have big dogs. My dog has a friend with eager eyes to seek out friendship. So eager is one of my strong words, and eager eyes is my alliteration. So to seek out friendship. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of putting a picture in my mind. Maybe painting a picture. My dogs have a friend. And my next stanza, I'm going to say my dogs have a friend. You could say greeting them with, and right here I want to use alliteration. So I'm going to go back, greeting them with their paws. Pretty impatient? No, because they're inside. Their big, beautiful brown eyes? Well, no, because the squirrel doesn't really see the big, beautiful brown eyes. We already used eager eyes, so I don't want to use eager ears. So greeting them with their big, booming bark. I like it. Greeting them with big, booming bark. Does anybody else dog have a big, booming bark? Loud. So my dogs have a friend. There's my alliteration again. And I'm going to say, I kind of want to give a context of where my dogs think that this friendship lives. And like I said earlier, they are living on the other side of the glass. So I'm going to say live. So my dog has a friend that lives on the other side of the glass. I'm going to say my dogs have a friend, and I want to give away more about what their friend is, because right now we only know that they live on the other side of the glass and it's smaller than them. So it could be a bird, a chipmunk, a hummingbird, but I want to give away something that will specifically tell my readers that it's a squirrel. And one thing that I know about squirrels is that squirrels love to run up trees and they stash nuts. Have you guys seen a squirrel stash nuts and acorns? I have. So I'm going to say, my dogs have a friend that collects acorns and runs up and down the tree. I'm going to read a few more stanzas. My dogs have a friend. And this is where I want my reader to guess or to figure out what I'm talking about. Who is this friend? Who is this person that Ellie and Ruby are so desperately wanting their friendship? I'm going to say, my dogs have a friend. Can you guess what I could be? So the reason why I ended it like that is because this is what I want my readers to get from my poem. I want them to guess, what is this friend? And so that is what I'm leaving my readers with, is I'm leaving them with wonder, and I'm leaving them with questions about, I think it is a squirrel, or maybe it could be a chipmunk, or something like that. So that's why I'm leaving like so. So now I'm going to transition this to you, and I want you to come back to this poetry to this poetry toolbox, and this is also posted on the page. I want you to go back to the poetry toolbox and use things that we talked about in our poems. So we talked about repetition, alliteration, painting a picture, and strong word choice. And I'm going to task you to do the same thing. And is what you are going to do is you are going to write your own poem and you are going to share it with us all. So you are going to post it to the Padlet that is on my page right here. So this is my page, and you're going to scroll down to get to right here. It says publish your poetry. So you're going to click on it. And it says, publish your poetry here. Feel free to add a picture of your poem with it. So here is mine, but I want to read yours. So you're going to go down in the very corner and press the little plus sign. And right here, this is where you add it. So you can title it, whatever. You could say acorn, and then you just write your poem. And if you want to upload a picture, you can click on the camera. And if you messed up, you can just delete it right here. Okay, I cannot wait to read your poems, and I'm so excited to know more about what you are trying to get the message across to me. And one thing I want to leave you with, and so this is Amy Ludwig, so our favorite author that we've been talking about today. This is actually a poem, or sorry, a quote that I pulled from her page, and I want to leave it in your head about your own personal writing story. So this says, for me though, writing does not always mean making marks on my paper. Sometimes my writing time is simply thinking time, daydreaming about a word or a line or a poem, lying on our couch, driving to school, looking out the window at birds on a suet cake. I often find myself wondering what my pen will write and then looking forward to tinkering and cutting and beginning again. So to all of my writers out there, best of luck to you. And I cannot wait to read more about your repetition poems. So you guys, good luck, and I'll talk to you soon.